right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh, and joined as always, it is
Matty Juice. What is going on, everybody? Happy to be back. Happy to talk about some demos this week. Next Fest. How's it going, Tommy?
It is going. I am excited. I love demo season. And I guess demo season is any season, but like Next Fest feels like kind of a big moment in the year for us to play some demos and see some really cool ones, and maybe not some not so great ones, but we do want to feature some ones we really liked and that we're like locked in. Hey, we cannot wait for this to come out. It's on our wish list. So we're each going to name two that we really liked, and we'll shout out some others maybe we played as well. But, you know, I'm really excited for it. But before we do that, we got to catch up. How you been? What's going on? What's new?
Been doing good. I know we saw each other over the weekend at our buddy Baggs' place. It was a good time. Had fun. Had some great fajitas and some appetizers. But there you go. And yeah, it was a good time. You know, it's been good lately. Actually, we're getting a new dishwasher tomorrow. Oh my God, because our other one was leaking. They actually brought us one last week and they tested it out. They like had everything installed. They tested it out and like water started shooting out the side of it. So it was like broken. So now they had to come back and get a new one. So hopefully everything goes all right with that tomorrow, because I am sick of hand washing, Tom. It's been like 2 weeks of hand washing and it's terrible. I don't know how people did this. That's just been a little annoying. But yeah, other than that, it's just been tiring at work. You know, a lot of stuff going on at work, and some not so good, some kind of interesting, sort of stuff. But other than that, just been kind of baby prepping, doing dog stuff, nothing too crazy, and obviously playing some demos, which I also big fan of Next Fest, because I feel like it's like the biggest spotlight on demos.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love playing games for the show, but there's just something special about being like, I get to play like a few different games for next week. Like I play enough of a demo and I'm like, let me browse. Let me see what else is out there, So it's cool. And, shout out to Capolo too, who's done an awesome job of recommending some demos that he really likes in our Discord, which I know will be part of the news. It's a little foreshadowing. Definitely, obviously, if you guys have any awesome demos that you checked out during the Next Fest, unfortunately, I think it ends today, the day we're recording. So if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, the Next Fest is over, but there'll be another one around the corner. But we're always open to the kind of more demos. If you guys want to recommend any, because I think it's a cool way to try out some new games. So yeah, I was having fun doing that. That was maybe, kind of the gaming highlight for me recently. But Tommy, how's everything going with you? How was your weekend?
It's good. It's good. Went out to dinner on Friday. Went to this place that we really like by us. A nice Italian place. Got pizza with pepperoni and long hots on it. Oh, man, it was so good.
That new Italian place that you had tried a few episodes ago?
No.
Same one?
No, this is an old staple for us, although we do really like that other place. But that was good. I guess like the day after we recorded last week, I went to college night bowling at the College of New Jersey, formerly Trenton State, with some buddies. I mean, it's like $1 a game, and then like $2.50 beers, which is like unheard of if you're going to a normal adult bar. But if you're trying to blend in with the kids, you're gonna get some pretty cheap booze, that was fun. And then we went over to Bag's house. That was fun. I made these little bean and cheese cups in wonton wrappers. I think they turned out all right. I would make them again, I think. But yeah, other than that, just I played some Flesh and Blood yesterday, which was nice, and now I'm just excited to get through this week, because work does suck, doesn't it? I hate work. It is not a good thing. I I
Yeah.
thought I was going to lose it today. I was sitting there, and that's not even, I told you before the show, we went, like, I got held late at work, which is infuriating to me already. I don't want to be here.
Yep.
And I'm not getting paid overtime, although I think I could try to get paid overtime. So maybe one day. Now, I was just sitting there. I was like, man, my soul is getting sucked right now. This is soul sucking. And I was like staring at the computer screen, and I got over it. I had some coffee or whatever, and we were good to go. Now, I do want to end on a high note. But I can't. No, everything's great and grand. But I'm excited to talk about these demos. I wanted to look back at some games that we played at the last Next Fest that we covered. Because I just did a little Control F on our Google sheet here. And we played Goons, Legends, and Mayhem, the demo, which we did review and ended up not loving as much as we thought we would. We played Boar Blasters. Which ended up being a certified fresh juice. And then we played Dungeonborn. And I don't really remember that one as well.
It was like essentially it was like Dark and Darker. It's like a medieval kind of an extraction sort of game. I think it kind of just ended up blending in with a lot of other games. So it wasn't really anything I continued to play, but it did have some hype at the time. So it's cool to still check it out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. You did that one. I did Boar Blasters, and we both did Goons.
Yeah.
It was that was fun. So we got one stinker, one mediocre, and one banger out of it. Let's see how many we actually get from this Next Fest. But first, we do have some news. The biggest news in the world. Fresh Juice Discord. It's the biggest. It's the biggest Discord I've ever been in. That's for sure. It's pretty cool. Check it out. It's in the show notes below. You can hang out with us. You can talk about what your experience with Next Fest. We'll have to bring up what Capolo liked from it as well, and kind of talk about what Capolo liked. You could tell us what you liked, and we'll read it on the show.
Yeah,
we'll do anything. We're
there
crazy.
You go. and also Capolo, I know he was like, here's my final list if anyone cares. It's like, of course we care. This is awesome. Thank you for putting this together. There's some games on there I never even heard of that I want to check out. Also, I saw a game on there that we're talking about today. So there you go. It's an awesome place to be, and always sharing some Baltro news in there, and just like some game recs and all that sort of stuff. And obviously a great way to submit listener questions too, which we do at the end of the show. So definitely join that Discord if you haven't already. We've been getting some pretty positive comments on the YouTubes. All right. We got another one today or recently. Yeah. So if any of you out there commenting on the YouTubes, get on the Discord. Send us those comments on the Discord.
No. Keep commenting. And if you have negative things to comment, you could do that too. It all drives the algorithm, but we like the nice ones. We do like the nice ones. Now, real news, not a whole lot, but I saw and watched, I did post about it in the Discord, a little mini documentary about the making of Animal Well with Billy Basso. Was it Donkey Games?
Yeah,
is the YouTube, and then
Video Game Donkey.
The guy who helped publish or kind of like game direct the game with Billy Basso also helped on Axiom Verge 2, or is helping on Axiom Verge 2. I forget, or was at the time. But it was interesting, kind of just listening to Billy Basso talk about the whole experience of making Animal Well. I think it was on Second Wind YouTube channel or Second Wind Games. So I would check that out. It was a pretty good little 50-minute documentary that you can watch if you really liked Animal Well or just indie games in general, or even just the idea of a solo dev and what that means. I thought it was really interesting, and really I gained a lot of respect for Billy Basso and kind of the process that he had in game design, right? To kind of pinpoint what he loved in video games from growing up. And like a lot of what that is in the game secrets and like mechanics that just make sense and are fun. And I like that was just um, something that I really appreciate. So check it out.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I definitely gotta check it out because obviously Animal Well is a game we rated very highly on the show, and um, I think that's so cool too. Just like that's what I think of when I'm playing games, right? Is like when I'm playing something and there's a Zelda-esque secret in it. I got it out of Animal Well. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Makes me feel like a kid again, discovering that kind of stuff. And also that kind of reminds me the way you're describing the documentary. And I probably should have included in the news. I don't think we did last week, but I also shared in the Discord an article from Local Thunk
Oh yeah.
talking about solitaire and how that essentially was a huge inspiration for him to create Balatro because he wanted to create kind of this timeless sort of game, which obviously solitaire is. And it's almost like the perfect game,
Mm-hmm.
at least like classic solitaire. Klondike, right? That's
Yeah.
usually, I think, what most people play. So that's a great article as well. I'll be sure to share that in like the show description. But yeah, you kind of see those parallels, I guess, with the solo devs, of just like, at the end of they got no one really telling them no, and they're like,
Yeah.
I want to make exactly what I've always envisioned, and two successful stories right there with those two games.
Both in the same year. I mean, honestly, Animal Well probably would have won more awards if it didn't come out the same year as Balatro, but that's okay.
Yeah,
You don't need to put two bad bitches against each other. They
yeah.
are, you know, excellent games. So yeah, it was
Hey,
really interesting.
and they both got some awards at the Juicies. All right,
Oh
so we
yeah.
we made sure we gave Animal Well and Balatro some recognition there.
Yes, yes. Now, what is this next article? I didn't even see it yet. I saw you posted it.
Yeah, just kind of something I found right before the show. I just thought it was kind of fun. So there's this game called A Good Snowman is Hard to Build. It's an indie game, and to mark 10 years of this indie game being out, it's on itch.io or itch.io, however you say it. They're actually changing the price of the game every hour according to the temperature in London. Now they're basing it on Celsius, obviously, so it's like it's as cheap as it can kind of be. And people, said, what if it gets to zero or below zero? Then the game will just be free. But I just checked earlier; the game was $3
Oh,
because it's 3 degrees Celsius there, and normally the game is $15. So check it out. I don't know. I don't know if it's a good game. It's a puzzle game. A good snowman is hard to build. It looks kind of interesting, but I just think this is a really cool, not only just like a marketing tactic, but just a cool thing to do, right? Like just, maybe someone who hasn't picked up this game yet, waiting for a sale. They're like, oh, now I got to look up the weather in London. Is it cold tonight? Because I'm buying this game. And it kind of fits perfectly also, obviously, with the title, right? It has snowman. Should, if it's cold, it's cheaper. But I don't know, just a really interesting way to kind of put your game on sale. I don't think something like this would probably possible on Steam if it has to change every hour, but very cool that this is happening on itch.io, or itch.io.
yeah. I'm gonna have to try this game out because it does kind of look like fun, and there's something about it that reminds me of Ski Free, even though it's a little bit more sophisticated here. And honestly, it brings up an interesting thing that itch.io or itch.io or whatever is something that we don't talk about a lot, but there's some great games on there and some
Yeah,
really really cool things, and like it almost acts like as a Bandcamp in a way for indie developers, right?
yeah.
If anybody's familiar with the music platform, which is for indie music creators, I just bought something on Bandcamp today, actually. So it is, yeah. I would say check out more games on itch.io. Maybe we'll have to cover one soon. Uh, that'd be
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah, I think also there's been a few games that we've played or we've reviewed on the show where they first released on itch.io. So it seems like maybe it's easier to publish on there as
Hmm.
well, which is great, obviously, for indie devs. So yeah, definitely something we got to look at more for sure. I know we're kind of stuck in our ways with Steam because it's like the platform, but there's definitely, yeah, some better, indie platforms out there. I think even like GOG, right? I think is a good
Hmm.
one. So yeah, we'll have to check that stuff out.
I did play that Seal of Solitude, the game that
Yeah.
you had mentioned in an article, the kind of dungeon crawler solitaire game,
Yeah.
and I'll still play it on itch.io. It's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Excuse
Yeah.
me,
It's awesome.
I'm getting choked. I'm verklempt. Um, and then also, I mean, I have the Playdate, and that's I think you just download games from itch.io onto your Playdate like website, and then it shows up in your Playdate. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
demos. Next Fest. What is it? How is it? And where can you find it? Well, Steam is the answer to at least the last one of those questions. And what it is a featurette of demos for games coming soon, right? Which is always a cool way to feature games, is by having demos and getting people a little bit hooked. We mentioned Balatro. The Balatro demo was famously a lot of fun and got people to wishlist it immediately. Now, we each played a couple games. Do you want to shout out some games that we aren't going to cover that you played and that perhaps you're not didn't want to feature it as much?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So there were actually kind of two other games that I played, other than the ones I'll talk about. One of them is called Afterblast. It is a FPS roguelite, and it was interesting. The only reason I didn't want to cover is it didn't really feel too challenging. I don't know if it kind of gets more challenging as you go, but it's almost like, I don't know. We don't have footage of this one, but it's kind of this like mythological, like sci-fi kind of world, and you're really just going level to level. You're getting different weapons. You're encountering different enemies, but it's an FPS, which is kind of cool, and it's very colorful and bright. I think it even has some co-op in it as well. I think you can do like up to 3 players. So that was a cool one. It's called Afterblast. And then another one I played, which was an interesting one, is called Conquest Dark. So this is it's essentially like a survivor like, but it kind of follows like a story, which is interesting. So you kind of, when you start, you're choosing kind of an archetype for your character, and then as you progress, you're getting different pieces of armor that you add onto your character, and there's this really interesting like bleed mechanic as well, where you're if you take some damage, like you'll see blood start gushing from your character, but you have like 10 health bars. So when you lose a health bar, you just go, it says like 9 next to it, and then you lose another one, it says 8 next to it. So the further you kind of go down in your health bars, the more you start to bleed, and you'll actually be like losing health. So you're kind of, once you start taking damage, you're kind of going against the clock, because there's nothing that will stop the bleed, but you can get things that are like, upgrades that are like bleed resistance, and different kind of increases there. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't play a ton of that one, Conquest Dark, but I do appreciate that they were trying to do something a little bit different, and kind of like integrate it into like almost like a story. It actually has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. It came out, actually it sorry, it says it released December 4th,
Oh.
but it's coming out, but it says available April 30th, 2025. So I don't know why it says, I guess maybe that's when the demo originally came out. I'm not really sure, but um it's an interesting one, Conquest Dark. If you're into like survivor likes, it's got a little bit of differences from maybe some other ones that you've played. I recommend checking that one out. But I just like these other two a lot more, that I'll get into. But I know there were some other games also that you had played that you're not kind of covering today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that was a Conquest Dark.
Yeah.
It sounds like Leona Lewis, the game. Keep bleeding, keep bleeding
Yeah.
in love.
Yeah.
I was sitting on that one for a minute, and but yeah. So I played 2 other games, and one was the Inkborn Combat demo. Now, Inkborn is a deck builder roguelike coming out. This is very much, it feels like a slate, like a true to the Slay Spire kind of genre, right? Player on the left, enemies on the right. Play out your cards, have X amount of resources, everything's
Mhm.
origami and literature themed. So your character looks like an origami like monk, and then you're playing against like origami like beasts and stuff like that, and monsters, and you can kind of tell that they have stuff written on them, and all of the mechanics are kind of themed like paper or whatever. Like, oh, this card will give your opponent torn for 2 turns or something like that. And um, at first I was like, okay, this is just a straight up Slay the Spire clone. And then it did something pretty interesting. Each card will be a certain kind of card. So there's like attack cards, and then there's like a higher level of an attack card, and then there's a buff card, and then there's a defense card. If you play them in certain orders, you get a combo, almost like a fighting game, and you'll basically get an extra attack or an extra buff or an extra spell or something like that. And I thought that was really interesting. And then it kind of lists what you have available to kind of play out, so you can kind of think about, okay, I can do this combo this turn, but maybe it's better to do the other one, or maybe it's better to just not go for the combo at all. So I thought that was really interesting, but it's just the combat right now. So obviously they're kind of hiding some stuff for the full release, and I thought the combat worked quite well. I mean, it's a pretty proven system. That combo stuff was pretty neat. So I would check that out if people are interested in the deck builder roguelikes, especially like Slay the Spire. And then I also played Rainbreaker, which is a Hades-like, which is kind of like this steampunky, not like or maybe more cyberpunk. Yeah, cyberpunky kind of Hades-like, which has some like medieval themes in it as well. It was like cool, but there was just something missing. It felt like I was just playing a Hades skin rather than playing a new game,
Yeah.
and that's kind of why I'm not featuring it. Obviously, it's just a demo, and definitely could be improved upon the release. So I'm not writing that game off. I'll keep it on my radar. But it just wasn't enough for me to talk about today. Now, let's talk about the first game that you played. Now, mind you, I haven't really watched any footage of any of the games you played so far, so it'll be kind of interesting to see the footage as you're talking about it. So tell us about Megabonk, and we're going to talk about the
Yes.
overview, what we loved, and what we would like to see improved for launch.
Yeah, so Megabonk, here it is, putting it on the screen. So this is an interesting one. I did not know what to expect going into this. It's made by a solo dev, developed and published by Vetinad. Obviously, the demo is available on Steam. It's set to coming soon, so unsure when they plan on releasing it. But here's the description: smash your way through endless waves of enemies and grow absurdly powerful. Grab loot, level up, unlock characters, and upgrade to create unique and crazy builds as you fend off hordes of creatures. Also, the developer does have they posted on the Survivors Likes Reddit to kind of get some feedback from their demo that they released about a week ago. And they actually add a little bit more context. They say that they played Vampire Survivors for the first time this summer and they really liked it. So they wanted to make something similar, but in 3D with more of a focus on movement. It also takes inspiration from other bangers I enjoy, like Risk of Rain 2. So that's kind of the biggest thing. Like when you're watching this game, right? Obviously, it's more kind of 3D, almost like Super Mario 64. This is an ad that's playing. This is not the game. This is Disney Plus. But as you can see, it is it kind of reminds you of like those maybe PS2, Nintendo 64, even like GameCube kind of games in terms of like the graphics. But obviously, there's a really like humorous tone to it because you can see with some of these enemies. So it does work in a lot of ways like Vampire Survivors, like a Survivors like, but it just has a lot more fun with it. It's just silly. You can upgrade your movement speed to be like ridiculous, so you're just like going nuts around this map. It has really great like points of interest all over the place. So there's certain points of interest that give you just straight up upgrades. There's like challenges on the map that you can find. There are different sort of upgrades where you have to like stay in a certain area for a certain amount of time, and then you get the upgrade, kind of like what we've seen before. But what I will say about this game is that like I feel like because it's in 3D, it feels like it gets way more hectic than something like that I don't know, like in Vampire Survivors or any of those kind of top down sort of survivor likes where I don't know, you feel like you maybe have more screen real estate. In this one, like I felt like I am running away from these things because there's just a horde of giant heads that are trying to lick me. And then there's all these other silly creatures. There's like these big fat guys that come after you. Even if you look on their Steam page, there's some stuff on there that's not available in the demo, and they got some insane looking enemies that kind of come after you. So, just to back it up a bit, you choose a character like you normally do in these survivors likes. They have different benefits. Obviously, like one's faster, has a better luck chance. That's the one that you're seeing on screen right now. One of them is really cool. It's a skeleton you can unlock that has like a skateboard, so you're skateboarding around, and every time you jump, you're doing a trick. So that's pretty interesting. And then there's a few other ones like slower enemies that you can find that are just more tanky. They have different health stats, things like that. So it's got your normal kind of mechanics, right, for a survivors like. But what I just really enjoyed about this game is just I don't know, the way that like it keeps surprising you because of how unserious it takes itself, right? Like it's just there'd be a new enemy that come up and I'd be like, what is that thing? Or there'd be some sort of challenge that came up and I didn't realize I hit it, and all of a sudden there's a swarm of enemies. There's like these swarm events that happen, so you are just dealing with a ton of enemies all at once. But then you have those upgrades that can really kind of not make things super trivial, but they make it to a point where you feel like you're just so powerful because you can just kind of sprint around the map, and it's just dealing a bunch of damage to all the enemies around you. There's different types of you know kind of different types of attacks you can get. You can shoot fireballs, you get attacks that are more AoE, you get like lightning strikes, kind of the typical sort of stuff. What I really enjoyed as well is you just saw one of them pop on the screen. You find treasure chests around the world, but most of them need to be opened with gold that you acquire, I believe, just by like defeating enemies. And then there's also like pots on the ground that you can break open and get gold out. So you open them with gold, and then it kind of turns almost, it reminds me of just like a casino, like a slot machine. You hit open, and it's just like, it's got like the perfect music for like getting you excited about what you're about to get. And if your rarity increases as it's opening, it's like dun dun dun, kind of builds up just like a slot machine would. So that was really well done. And then there's objectives in the game as well. So you can see on the screen right now, there is kind of this boss bar on the top, but this actually isn't the boss that you can find on this level. This is, I guess, basically a mini boss. So they'll pop in, they'll give you some better rewards as well. But then there is kind of this summoning station where you can summon a boss and defeat the boss. Now, the level that you're watching right now is the only one available in the demo. It's called the Forest, but there seems to be, I believe there's 8 different kind of worlds that you can enter, and you can see some more of them on the Steam page. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, for me, it feels like, this game is still obviously a bit early because it's a demo made by a solo dev. So there's definitely a few things where I'm like, it's a little bit, it needs to be polished a bit. But I do think that it kind of brings back like this nostalgia, but then also with a kind of a modern take on it because it's a survivor like, and we never really kind of played that stuff growing up. So I feel like it has that good balance there. And yeah, it's just fun at the end of the day. I mean, it's called Mega Bonk. It's like it's got silly enemies. It's you're getting moldy cheese right here coming out of that chest, which gives you a percent chance to like poison enemies. So yeah, to me, it is just a silly, fun game to kill some time. I could easily see this being on like mobile even, but I had fun just sitting back on the couch with the controller. It's got controller support, and just enjoying myself, doing these runs. And then, obviously there's unlocks and there's quests, but in the theme of the game not taking itself too seriously, when you die, it says like something like, "Oh, you're dead." Like maybe it's a skill issue, and then it says like try again. I'm like, oh, these like these sons of guns, So I had to. It made me go like I'm going to do another run because I just want to kind of keep going. So another ad. Look at YouTube getting greedy with the ads. Um, but yeah, I don't have like I think the game kind of speaks for itself, but I found it to be just a great time killer. And I'm excited to check out the other levels. I feel like I played enough of this forest level and kind of got an idea of all those different enemies. So I want to see what's next with a game like this. But I don't know. Yeah, it's just the animation, the overall vibe of the game. It just kind of reminded me of like the Nintendo 64 days. Of like this could be something that I would play on there and just kill time with. So I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed like a new take on a survivor like that. I feel like we get a lot of games that are very similar in the survivor like genre. So I appreciated this one. Kind of going the other direction. Right? It's not going like into Norse mythology or trying to be super serious. Right? It's just like let's just throw a bunch of random things in here. You got a banana rang. You got all these weird unlocks, all these weird characters. So it's got a lot of charm to it. And yeah, it was a good game to just kind of kill some time.
Yeah, man. I mean, as soon as it started, like up here in the gameplay footage that we have, I immediately was like, "Is this RuneScape?" Because it feels like and looks a lot like RuneScape to me. Like,
Yeah.
And just even like the textures and everything like that. But it does look like a lot of fun. I saw the one item that's called Gym Sauce. So I was like, that's hilarious. This enemy there that the player is fighting right now, Chunk Ham, the Terrible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm all in for this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely one that I will also keep on my radar because it looks like a good time. And these arcadey style things, like it makes sense to not take itself seriously. So I could see why this would be such a blast.
Yeah, for sure. And I could this is one of those games where I could see this at like a PAX booth and
Mm-hmm.
like people trying to get the high score for the weekend, right, or something like that. Because honestly, the runs they don't like take too long. I actually think the timer, it counts down, so you're not trying to like, I don't know, Vampire Survivors is trying to hit like 30 minutes, right? And then like the boss comes out, I think. So it works a little differently. I know some other Survivor likes do that, but yeah, it's a cool one. It's a cool one. Now, what did you play, Tommy? What was your first demo?
The first demo I played is a game that I had actually mentioned. I think it may be a Rec Room that I played its first iteration of a demo. They've come out with another demo. There's been a little bit of hype behind this game. This is The King is Watching. This is a city builder, another city builder. After we played Dawnfolk, very similar. You have your grid where you can place different kinds of tiles that will create different kinds of resources. And you start off, you have your like castle village or whatever, and it's like I guess you start off with an 8x8 or a 4x4 grid. And you build your things. You need to get a certain amount of water, wheat, wood to get more other things. Like there are just like huts to get more people, right? And then there's also different kinds of buildings that you can build as well that will either create more people to fight in a certain kind of way or be merchants so you can trade stuff for other resources, yada yada yada. All like your typical city builder stuff. But the thing that's pretty unique here is, well, the king is watching. You are playing the king, and you can see the king in the bottom right corner of the screen. So on the screen you have your grid to the left, your king's in the bottom right corner, and then there's the road that's leading into your castle. So you're creating these like people to defend your castle. And the interesting thing here is your tiles only work. Like the people that are tending those tiles only work when you look at them. So you start with an L-shaped view of your kingdom, right? So you can only see 3 tiles at a time, and you got to like start to like kind of balance. Like, oh man, I'm good on water. I need to maybe move and start watching the merchants so they create more gold, so I can get more gold to build this and that and that. And then you also have to pay attention to, at the top of the screen, there is the progression of time and the enemies that are coming at you. You can see them as little flags at the top, and you can hover over it to see what enemies are coming, and typically you can kind of see. I don't know if you can see what kind of reward you'll get, but there is one way you'll be able to see rewards. So you have to know, or you see that, so you know what you're going to have to kind of create in terms of defending your castle ahead of time. And then you get some other cool rewards. You can beat a enemy kind of horde that comes in, a wave of enemies, and you get like a prophecy. And this was like another really cool thing I liked about this game is the prophecy will let you choose the next 3 enemies that come and attack you and what rewards come with them. So you're like, I'm pretty weak. I'm going to pick 3 weak enemies to come. I don't care if the rewards suck. Or you're like, my kingdom's kicking ass right now. I'm going to get, some really good rewards from like really tough enemies, which is pretty neat. You can upgrade your view as well. You can go from only seeing 3 spaces to 4, so you can start producing more. Then you also get like spells. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, you'll see there's these almost like a honeycomb shaped menu next to the king's face, where you'll get spells, and that's a way for you to actually attack the enemies as well. It could be like a bolt of lightning. There's also things like fireworks you can get. And you're like, well, what are fireworks? You put them on one of your tiles to make them produce more stuff. So you're like, yeah, good job. You got fireworks. So there's a lot of humor in this as well. It's the whole idea of it is that like, yeah, everybody's going to slack off if you're not watching them. And that's just so fun. I put in a decent amount of hours into this because it's kind of, what the heck? There's going on. Yeah, we need to get YouTube Premium.
Yeah.
So it's, sorry about that, folks. For the listeners, we just saw an ad that was a little wild. It's a fun little game. It looks good. It's like just perfect little pixel art, and it's easy to grasp as a city builder. That's something that we also liked about Dawnfolk. This one kind of requires a little bit more of like a RTS kind of mindset where you're trying to, manage your resources on the go a little bit and also like pay attention to the enemies, which I like. Currently, you only have access in the demo to one king who has a certain power where you can actually move your tiles. So if you built a hut in one spot, you can actually move it to a different empty spot. Now, I don't know what the other kings are going to have, but that was kind of fun. I mean, it's cool. It felt like every run I did was different too. Like it didn't feel like the enemies and the rewards were the same, and it was neat. I liked it a lot. Now, some things I would like for the game to improve upon release. Well, I think there's some UI stuff that I don't love, and not even in the main screen. It's more in the reward area. Like if you're looking right now, you can choose an upgrade. It just feels a little bit messy and a little bit confusing, I think. And I just want that to be kind of cleaned up. And really, it's a matter of, are they going to stick the landing with the rest of the game? Because it is a really fun demo. Will it be very fun beyond that is the real question. I think it will be, but it kind of depends on the depth of everything else going on, the different kinds of kings that you can have, and also there is some meta progression as well in the village that you start out in too. You can upgrade different things and I think get access to different buildings and such. So cool game. I like it. There's even like some cool RPG style like encounters where it'll pop up. It'll be like, you ran into a cult
Mm.
and you have 3 options of what to do, and they'll tell you the 3 options and they'll tell you what that will do for you, right? You can say, kill them all, get like a bunch of gold. Capture their leader, you get a wizard that stands out in front of your castle and fights for you all the time. And then I forget what the third option was because I took the wizard, obviously. But that was pretty cool. So there's a lot going for this game. There's a lot of hype for this game. I did also fail to mention it is developed by Hypnohead. It's being published by Tiny Build, which obviously publishes a lot of big indie games. So pretty excited to see where it goes. I think they even made a lot of improvements from the original demo that I played. So I think they're getting close to a release or at least the announcement of the release at this point. But yeah, that's The King is Watching.
Yeah, it looks cool. I know you've mentioned it before, and I do like that mechanic of obviously where the king is watching is where it's working, and it's also kind of funny. That's the corporate life, right? When your boss is nearby, you're working hard. No, but yeah, I think that's a neat mechanic, and I just really love the way like the game looks as well. Like
Mhm.
it kind of builds that that setting really well. And as far as like you might have mentioned this too, I might have missed it, but is the goal to kind of survive as long as possible, or are there different levels? Like, are you trying to defeat a certain amount of enemies? I see there's like a bar on the top. Is that like a progress bar for how kind of far you've made it? Like, how do you? Is there another level, or are you just trying to survive as long as you can?
I think so. I made it like pretty deep. I don't think I ever got to where you're supposed to progress. I feel like you do want to get to a certain point. But currently, I was only playing it to see how long I could last. I wasn't even paying attention to that, to be honest. That's
Yeah.
just kind of what I thought it was. That's something I would have to look into, but it would make sense. There's usually there is some kind of goal, or at least there are like boss waves and stuff like that. So like basically maybe just how many waves you go, and I don't know if
Yeah.
there's ever an end to it. So
Cool. Yeah,
interesting.
no, I mean, definitely looks cool, and has seems like it has a decent amount of depth. Hopefully, it has a successful launch for a game like this. Tiny build, they got some good marketing behind them. I'm sure they'll market it a decent amount. We might even see it at PAX.
I would be
Um,
shocked if we don't see it at PAX because if
yeah.
anything, I think it might be coming out around then.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, on the theme of castles,
Mm-hmm.
the next demo I played, is a game called Castle v Castle.
Ooh.
So let me just load up the gameplay here. Um, has a very minimalistic art style, as you can see. But just a little summary about this one. It is a 1v1 card game, and it's actually funded and supported by Slay the Spire's Casey Yano, who I believe is a co-founder of Megacrit. So actually funded by him, which is pretty interesting, and inspired by browser classic Castle Wars. Build up your castle and knock down your opponents brick by brick. So this is an interesting one. Something that obviously the art style grabbed me kind of right away. And make sure this gameplay is playing because I know it is kind of slow, but it is playing, folks. Don't worry. So essentially, how this game works, obviously, you have two castles. Your castle's on the left side, your opponent's castle is on the right side, and each castle has a certain amount of layers of bricks that you are trying to break down. While your opponent's trying to break yours down, you're trying to break your opponent's down, and if you get your opponents down to the bottom, then a treasure chest appears, you get a reward, and you kind of move on to the next level. Now, both castles have a set number of resources. So you have build resources, attack resources, and magic resources. So there are kind of two different sections of each of those resources. For build, you have like a little construction hat. It's basically how many like workers do you have that can produce bricks for you each level. And then you have little soldiers that this is how many kind of attack points they produce for you each round, or each, I shouldn't say each level, each round, and then, or each turn. And then for the magic resource, you have like a little witch hat, and that's how much magic is going to be produced for you each turn. So the cards that you get dealt, obviously they have a different cost. So some of them might cost more attack, some of them might cost more magic, some of them might cost more bricks. So typically the ones that cost bricks are ones that are going to kind of help fortify your castle a bit more. It's going to build your castle up, which is really satisfying to do. You're about to see that right there. So that person played castle +8, so that builds your castle up 8 different levels. And then you also have your attack cards, which obviously deal damage to the opponent's castle. So that might be something like, attack 4, and it's going to get rid of 4 different levels on your opponent's castle. And then your magic stuff is, going to be a bunch of different things. It could be attack. It could be some sort of like weird combination of like building up your castle and destroying the other castle a little bit. So there's a few different things, and then there's like certain items you can get as well. You can get like mirrors. So if you place a mirror in front of your castle, then your next opponent's attack will get reflected back to them. You can put roadblocks up where it just stops the next card that's played. You can also put kind of a cement barrier up, which you can see here, which stops the next attack that's played. So it's a pretty simplistic game, but I found it was really fun with kind of the back and forth where you're kind of on your last legs, and all of a sudden you like draw the perfect card, or you're able to deal enough damage because you've been saving your attack for so long. But what's also interesting too is that you can see your opponent's resources as well. So if you're like, oh wow, they're really stacking up a lot of attack here, let me play a magic card that removes 8 of their attack. So there's a lot of that happens because there's a lot of cards that are +8 bricks. Or here's another ad here. Look at that. YouTube Premium sponsor us. Um, uh, there's a lot. Where's my mouse? This is crazy. We're just gonna have to wait to the end of
Oh,
the
I see
ad.
the
Oh, there it
mouse.
is. There it is. Boom.
Oh,
Um, so there's a lot of like back and forth with that, and obviously you're playing against an AI opponent. It'd be cool if it was a real opponent, but so there's a lot of like +8 bricks to your inventory, and then the opponent will play -8 bricks, and you're like, oh, okay, they just canceled out what I did. So there can be a lot of back and forth there. There's also something really fun that kind of, I mean, it's a small thing that happens, but when your castle is actually pretty low, there'll be like a little dude that comes out with a sign. It says the end is nigh. And then if you build up your castle like quickly after that, it just like flips around. I think it says never mind, and he walks like off the stage. So it's like it's kind of cute little things like that. And then after each turn, like I said, you're going to choose a reward. And sometimes those rewards obviously benefit you. It could be, oh, you start with a mirror in front of your castle for the next turn. They're not going to be permanent rewards, at least from what I played, that kind of carry through your whole run. But then sometimes those rewards you get out of the chest are just for your opponent. And you'll have to kind of choose like the lesser of the two evils of like, I think one of them was my opponent starts with a mirror or my opponent starts with a roadblock. So do I want to reflect back the first attack that I do, or do I just want my first attack to be blocked? I probably just want it to be blocked and not reflected back at me. So there's these kind of interesting things that happen, as you're playing, and like I said, it's a very kind of simple game. It does remind me of like a flash game that you might play. I really do like the art style, and I do think that after doing a few runs of it, it does kind of get to a point where you're like, you really have to think about your opponent's resources. I found that the further I went, the better my kind of opponents got with managing their resources, and I had to make sure that I always kind of kept an eye on them. I couldn't just kind of play my game and just try to I'm going to build up a bunch of attack and I'll just do some heavy attacks towards them, because sometimes your card, you don't draw your cards the way that you think that you're going to draw them. Obviously we deal with that with a lot of different kind of card games, but I think in terms of like what I would like to improve for this game, I think it's kind of weird. You probably notice at the top of the gameplay, that's your opponent's hand up there. I think it's a
Mm.
little weird to even have that up there. There were definitely times where I was, like, trying to, like, drag a card up there, and, like, I thought they were, like, slots, like Balatro, like, I'm like, "Am I supposed to put stuff up there?" Or, like, solitaire? Um, but yeah, so that there's like that weird kind of UI issue. I don't really know why that's even necessary. I feel like you kind of always have a full hand, and the only benefit is like you get to see what your opponent played when the card flips over. But I don't think you need to see their whole hand for that. Also, I would like just more cards that have kind of wackier effects as well. I did get a good amount of enjoyment of the cards that are in the game, but I think some of the magic cards specifically could be like, crazier. Maybe it's not going to be things that are going to easily give you the win, but I think it could be interesting if some of the magic cards were kind of, uh, not positive for you all the time. So maybe it was just like there was a little bit of a negative effect with the positive effect that it brings. I feel like that makes sense kind of for magic where maybe it's destroy 5 levels of your opponent's castle but destroy 2 of yours too as well. So you kind of have to make that decision of like, well, where am I, like, is it worth that right now, um based on how high the castles are. So I don't know, I think that's something I'd improve. I'd also, this is selfishly, it's a single player game. I think this could be a really fun game to play online against people and just
Yeah.
castle versus castle. I know it's a roguelike and I don't know how that would work really with like each turn you're kind of matching up with someone different. Maybe I don't know, but I just think like just having a basic mode like this where you're going up against like your friends or just other people could be fun. But yeah, overall I think this game impressed me because going into it I'm kind of like, especially with games with this kind of art style, I'm always like, there's not really going to be a lot of fun gameplay elements. I feel like sometimes these games kind of rely on the art style to just bring people in, and then you realize the game's kind of shallow. But I had a lot more fun playing this than I originally thought. So I'm definitely curious to see kind of where it goes after launch. Currently, it's just set to coming soon, so there's no launch date that I've seen. But I mean, if the co-founder of Megacrit is funding it, there's got to be something to it, right? It's something interesting that they have planned for launch. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a different game for me. I usually don't play these sort of games really, but I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. My one question here is, we've been watching this gameplay for a bit. It does seem like, it's like, is it really hard to kind of get into this kind of stalemate where you don't actually take down the opponent's castle? There seems to be like a lot of going back and forth. I don't know what point of the game the person playing is in though.
Yes, no, there. This is. It seems like it's maybe the second or third turn or level
Okay.
in the game. Oh, you can see the end is 9. Little
Yeah.
sign comes out,
Oh.
and it says "Never mind," and he walks away. So yes, that does happen as well, and that's kind of why I would like a little bit more variety with some of the cards,
Mhm.
where maybe you could have bigger swings. I mean, you could see right now that player has 90 attack, which is like a lot from what I experienced, right?
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes it kind of felt like your resources maybe went to waste because they reset the next turn. So I don't know, just yeah, maybe better card variety. Maybe it's also just giving better decks from the beginning, because I'm seeing some cards here that I did not use. Like there's a 45 cost magic card right there called Chaos. I did not have a card that was that expensive when I was playing. So maybe this person, yeah, has maybe done some runs before, and that's why they have better cards. But yeah, sometimes there is those weird stalemates. But eventually a winner is kind of decided upon. But that's also kind of a side effect, I think, of just having, a card game where maybe you just have bad RNG and you're
Mhm.
just not getting the right cards at the right time. But what I did find is I never felt like I was just getting absolutely destroyed,
Yeah.
because of the RNG, which is a good thing. Like I felt like I had enough cards to kind of keep me alive until I got the right cards. And if I did end up getting defeated, it ended up being pretty close. So I think they did a good job with that. But yeah, I'd like to see kind of, I mean, 118 attack right now. Like those soldiers are ready to go. Let's get some some bigger attack cards in that deck there. But yeah, that's definitely a good point as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering because and listen, I don't mind a grind at all because mean, I even 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 last night I played a Flesh and Blood game that was like an hour and a half, and it was just like a control versus control match, and I'm like, this
Yeah.
is like the best thing ever. Although it sucks when you do it in person, I will say, because you're like, I gotta use my brain in a different way. But
Yeah.
no, this looks awesome. I'm definitely gonna check this out. I mean, any kind of card game, I'm all in, and I love the art style as well. So you've sold me on it.
Hell yeah, yeah. It is it's a more simplistic kind of card game, which is I guess more up my alley. But yeah, maybe they'll end up adding some PvP. We could play each other.
Yeah. Well, just like, I mean, this is always a good spot to start, especially with card game design. I think just like raw numbers and
Yeah.
see where it goes, and then you can kind of figure out the game system and then work from there. So it is really interesting. I'd like to the resource system is a little wacky, so I'd like to get my hands on it. So
Yeah.
very cool. Very cool. Now, my last game, my second game, is Rogue Loops by Fubu Games. This game is awesome. Okay, so this is in a way, roguelike action RPG. Much like Hades in a way, you can hop in. There's like a family, not unlike, not like the family is like the people you can play as.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, not unlike there's that one other game, God, another kind of roguelike action RPG, but that's neither here nor there. This is a game about immortality, right? These people wanted to achieve immortality. The thing that they didn't know was immortality comes at a cost, right? So you hop into this game and you're in a room and you're like, okay, I gotta beat the enemies, and then I move on to the next room. And then you move on to the next room, it's just on the other side of the wall that you were just at. You're like, okay, I'll beat the enemies here. And then you go back to the other room. And then you're like, oh, I'm in an infinite loop here. And the really interesting thing is, in a lot of these games, when you beat the room, you get to choose your buffs. When you enter the room here, you choose the room debuffs. So you're like, okay, there's also a buff that comes along with it, but you're like, okay, if you look at the screen now, there is these exploding barrels, and that's the debuff. And maybe it came with faster attack speed or a relic that give you like a permanent buff or something just for this room. So each room, each one of these two rooms will have all the debuffs and buffs that you have throughout the game. So it just keeps on getting harder and harder and harder. And your goal here is to fill up the meter, which I don't know if we could see it on here. I think this might be a little bit older footage, but there's a meter basically leading you to the boss, right? And whenever you choose a debuff, there are X amount of skulls, usually 1 through 3 skulls. So you choose the more dangerous debuff, you're going to get 3 skulls, and it's going to progress you towards the boss quicker. So you might want to speed run and like get a bunch of debuffs going, and yeah, it's going to be really hard, but you're going to see the boss sooner, and then you can move on to the next loop, and yada, yada, yada. This game was so much fun. It was just took everything that's awesome about these action RPG roguelikes and like gave it this really fun game loop, pun intended, where you know exactly what you're running into the next room, but it's going to get harder because you have to choose another debuff. And you're like, and then you got to start thinking about like, how am I going to stack these debuffs in this side of the room? You're just like, Okay. There was like the first debuff that I chose was the first hit on every enemy gets absorbed, and it doesn't have an effect. And that was like the worst debuff I could have picked. And I was like, what the? I was like, oh man, because like I had this like really, really good spell. So that's the other thing here. You have just like your basic dash and an attack, and then you always start with a new spell every time you start the game. And the cool thing about the spell too is you could just fire off the spell, just one click of the LB or RB. I played on controller; it was fully controllable. Or actually, they recommended you play with controller, and you could just fire off the spell, but you can also hold the spell and you get a little sigil that grows, and if you let go at the perfect time, you get like a perfect, and it does more damage. So there's a certain amount of like skill there as well, and golly, I mean this game was just so much fun and so hard. You're just like, man, I messed up this run because I was greedy. And I was like, yeah, there was one debuff where I picked and I was like, oh, this will be fine. I have a pretty good build going, right? I got some good relics. I got some good regular buffs. The debuffs on this room aren't too bad. And then the debuff I got was like every time you kill an enemy in this room, the other enemies get stronger. So it was just like spiraling out of control. And I was like, I need to get to the other room, because at least that one I got like a buff where I could actually get some health. So really, really just cool game loop here. And you get to the boss, and the boss doesn't have any of the debuffs for the buffs, but the bosses are really hard. And at that point, you probably took a lot of damage, especially in the early game before you unlock stuff. Now, back at the camp where you start, you can use the certain currencies that you get throughout the game to upgrade your stuff, meta progression, whatever. And that is kind of it, right? I actually never even got to get to a merchant. It never showed up for me. But you also get gold throughout the runs too. You can go to a merchant. And then there's the blue currency. If you see in the top right corner, that's what you use back at the base. And then there's souls. That's a little green thing that you can get another ability, basically a shield. So, yeah, I don't know. This was just like a good take on the genre that, we just came off of Sworn, which I also think was a great take on the genre as well. But this was so unique and really just a lot of fun. I like the art style here, kind of this like illustrated look to it. It almost reminded me of like the Hobbit GameCube game a little bit, which was a banger. And
Deadpool,
Wolverine. Yeah, everybody knows. But yeah, no, Rogue Lips was really sweet. Now that's everything I loved about it. Some things I'd like to see improved in the final launch is, I think the progression needs to be a little bit more forgiving, because currently you like fill out your skill tree by getting wishes, and you buy wishes with this blue currency, and each additional wish that you buy throughout the game will get more expensive. So like I understand that like you need to have it that way, but I felt like it was actually really overwhelmingly challenging to progress your character in a way with these wishes. So I think that could probably use some work here. I'm interested to see where they go with the other characters and what they do, because you only choose the one right now. But other than that, I mean, like the actual like gameplay was so fun that I don't even know. Like this is a game they can only mess up,
Yeah.
right? Like they have it, right? They could just stick the landing, and this is going to be a banger. But if they like just maybe like get a little too, I don't know, like over ambitious or something like that, like, oh, maybe we want this game to be super hard, which I think it's okay to be, but I think the inherent challenge of the game is already hard enough. I think the progression should be a little bit more forgiving.
Hmm.
But it was a good time. I really, really liked it.
Yeah, I can see why. I mean, like, you know, we always talk about kind of these. There's so many different types of Hades kind of games these days, right? And even talking about like Mega Bonk earlier with like a survivors like, and but they're trying to do something a little different. Like, I think this game, at least from what I've seen from the gameplay and you describing it, is doing something different in like the right direction. And I think it's really interesting that like the loop thing is cool, but I think the debuff thing is really the thing that like
Mm-hmm.
kind of sells me on it because that's a tougher decision than if it was just a buff, right? Because there's been times where like we play Sworn, right? And like maybe I have like two good options and I'm like, I'll just choose this one. Because there's not really a downside of me choosing it other than maybe just not being as efficient as I thought I was going to be. But when it comes to choosing debuffs, like you said, there's some that can just screw you over. So you really need to kind of make sure you're choosing the right ones. Now, I just have a question in terms of like the loop, right? Because obviously that's like I feel like pretty unique to this game. Are is each every time you go into the like a side of the loop, is it the same map layout? I guess I mean I'm seeing right now it's different, but I think this is a new run. So during the run, is it like you're always, it's always the same barriers, like same placement, or like each time you're entering that side of the loop, is it a different kind of layout?
Yeah, it is the same loop until you get to the boss. I haven't beaten the boss yet, but I assume it becomes a different loop, right?
Okay.
Because this is different from the last loop we just watched uh, with these little totem guys. Um, it does change, but I think yeah, you're basically in one big room, split into two rooms for the entirety of the first level of you getting to the first boss. So yeah, it's really interesting. You're right. The decision making is probably the coolest thing about this because there's always decision making in these games when you choose your like your buff when you
Yeah.
like beat a room, and there are like I was just looking at the buffs initially when I first started playing, and I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna get the debuff on the room or whatever. I didn't understand that they stacked, and I was like, why does this room keep getting crazier? This is insane. And then I was like, oh, I'm in a loop. It's called Rogue Loops. Oh, I'm an
Yeah.
idiot. And it really is. I mean, I watched a YouTube video on it, where the clickbaity title was Loop Hero meets Hades. And it literally was Loop Hero meets Hades. So obviously I love both those games. So I was in right away. So
Yeah, and I think it's cool too that like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like each side of the loop, like the debuffs only apply to the side that you applied
mm-hmm.
it on, right? So like you kind of need to keep that in mind. Like, did you find that maybe you were like relieved to get to like the next side because you're like, okay, these debuffs are easier to deal with, and
Yeah.
I kind of bought myself a little bit of time before I have to go back to the bad side.
Yeah. You're
Yeah,
like you get a. It's funny. You get like a feel for what the challenges are in each side as you go through the
yeah,
game, which is really cool. And because I like a lot of it, maybe I didn't read enough, but a lot of it, like I kind of learned as I went, and I was
yeah,
like, wait a second, I got a buff because also I think the buffs apply to each side. I was like, I got a buff where I get a tree that gives me a a little health potion every time I enter the room. Where is it? And then I realized, oh, it's only on the other side.
yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that was the easy side though.
Yeah, yeah, that's true too. Yeah, very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. So and the spells are pretty unique. And then there's like like the actual buffs have your normal like here's a relic that gives your burn spells, more damage, or something like that. So like, if you have like a burn spell, you're like, oh well, I'm gonna take that relic. That seems awesome. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was a banger. I'm looking forward to it. I looked, it's coming out in June, and also I looked at King is Watching is coming out in May. So right after PAX. So
Hell yeah. Look at that, May and June.
yeah,
Got it all freaking decked out for you, Tommy.
locked in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Hell yeah.
Those are the demos we played. If you like them, I mean they're demos, so you can check them out. I definitely want to check out Castle v Castle. Probably tried Mega Bonk as well if I get a chance. But yeah, this is all very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I'll definitely be checking out Rogue Loops. Hopefully it doesn't go away after today. Because I know that happens with the Next Fest sometimes. And then I'll probably try out King is I keep wanting to say He is Watching, but that's that
He
game
is coming.
Yeah. He is coming and King is watching. Oh.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe they'll do a bundle. They should.
Family show. They should. They really should. Where I want to read Capolo's games that
Yes.
he played. Oh, Capolo, our loyal question bot. Here's my final Next Fest demo summary. And Capolo played a lot. In wishlist, ready to purchase Wild Growth, Catanaut, Monaco 2, Nine Kings, Icaria, and Wheel World. I come as the real world.
Wheel World. Yeah.
Games to keep an eye on, need some polish. Card Draw, Norhold, Factory Planner, Nice Day for Fishing, Castle v Castle, and Sandistry. And then demos I really enjoyed but won't buy the full version. It was Is This Seat Taken? So yeah, I'd love to check out all of those.
Yeah, same here.
Seat Taken's kind of was like really loved it, not gonna buy it. So
yeah,
dunked on him, Capolo. Attaboy. Now, what do we have next? Listener questions.
Yeah, we do from Capolo.
Oh yeah, Capolo. Well, while we're on the subject, Capolo asks, Kirby eats any two indie video game characters of your choosing. Who and what abilities would Kirby gain?
Oh man. So he's eating two at once?
I guess maybe we each pick one.
Oh, okay.
There's two of us.
Yeah. All right, we'll do that. Yeah. And we can't say Jimbo. Let's see. That's a tough one. Maybe I don't know. You got anything top of mind here? I'm trying to think like what power would they take? A lot of these indie game characters, I can't think of like one that has like a cool power. Maybe Pepper Grinder. Pepper. Yeah. You get the drill. I guess. Yeah. Would you get the grinder? I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Maybe something like that could be cool.
Well, I'm assuming this is like not even for a Kirby game, but for Super Smash Bros.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
So Pepper Grinder would be cool. Nice little up B or side B or down B with the drill.
Yeah.
Although Kirby uses the B with the power. So do with that information what you will. I'm going to say the Blob from Animal Well because it's a little fresh in my mind. And you ride a Frisbee.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. But like it could also be like the star that Kirby rides.
Yeah. I like that. And then Kirby, after you take the power, he turns into like the outline of Kirby. Like the Animal Well, dude. Yeah. There you go.
That would be a sick skin.
Yeah.
Holy. Great question, Capolo. Kirby's sick. K Moore asks, do you think we're at the point in gaming where graphics barely get any better? Should devs focus more on gameplay once again?
I think that there's still games that come out today that it's not so much that we're like taken back by the graphics because we've seen so many games that look amazing, but the detail in the game is really impressive. I think that there's still room there. Like I know like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just came out. I know people really love the first game. Um, that game has a lot of detail in it from what I've seen. It's also a beautiful looking game, but I think people are really just more impressed by it because of all the little details that have been added in, which I guess is related to graphics at the end of the day and maybe even gameplay. But I always think that devs should focus more on gameplay versus graphics. I mean, I was playing Mega Bonk. I mean, that's not a game where the graphics are like amazing, but I had fun with the gameplay. So, obviously Minecraft is a testament to like, you don't need the best graphics to, or the most highest fidelity graphics
Or
to,
even Vampire Survivors. I mean, that
yeah.
game makes millions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just I think devs should always focus more on gameplay than graphics. But I don't think that they should neglect detail though in their games, especially if it's like a single player game. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree with you a lot there. I do think that I'm someone that like I don't care how realistic it looks. Oftentimes, the more realistic it looks, the least I'm into it because you tend to like want to make a more cinematic game once you get to that point where I'd rather just watch a movie, right? I want to play a good game that I'm going to have a lot of fun with. Although I don't want devs to stop caring about graphics, but that doesn't mean they have to be great graphics, quote unquote. I want them to treat it like an art form, right? Because like Animal Well is a great example, right? Just beautiful. It's not good graphics. I mean, it's just a beautiful game. I mean, it is good graphics, but it's not
Yeah.
like
Realistic.
like some people out there be
Yeah.
like, well, it's just pixel art. Who cares?
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's like maybe harder to do, like to
Yeah.
make look really good. So, yeah, I think gameplay should always come first, but like also don't forget that it has to be easy on the eyes in one way or another.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's probably I feel like there's always advancements with like the realism of games, but it doesn't mean a game is going to be fun. That's why they have like those tech demos showing
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like look how amazing this is, but this has to run on a $5,000 computer for it to
Yeah,
look like, right?
yeah.
So like it's just not practical. So yeah, I agree. Like there's a difference between like great graphics and like like realism, basically. So I think Kamo was probably asking about like realism here, I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, in graphics. So, yeah, but I think that it's cool though when games are really realistic, like Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm like, that's pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the end of the day, it's going to be the gameplay that has to win me over.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think if graphics get any better, like, the first part of your question, it's going to be so, like, at least with, like, human characters, so uncanny valley kind of, like,
Yeah,
creepy that I don't think people really even like that. They're like, I don't know. It's too close, but not all there, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So, great question, though, K-More. And last question comes from Arcarp, who asks, would you rather make a game that was a masterpiece that never gets crazy popular, or a game you don't even like that does get popular?
Um, that's a good question. Because obviously there's pride in knowing that you made a masterpiece, and even if it doesn't get crazy popular, it doesn't mean that there's not a fan base for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, or a game that you don't even like that gets popular. I probably would rather make a masterpiece that never gets crazy popular, because if maybe I can still make a living off of it, and at least I'm like happy
Mm-hmm.
to make updates to the game, right? Like it's not something I hate to do. Um, but I was also thinking if you made a game you didn't like that got really popular, then your next game could be what you want to do, and you already have a fan base to sell it to. But I'd probably go with the masterpiece one, I guess.
Yeah, I think the same, but to play a little devil's advocate for the other one, um, let's say I made a game that I don't even really like that much and it gets crazy popular or whatever. It is possible this is like, oh, I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think people would like it. And maybe that's the reason I didn't like it. And then you
Yeah.
see people enjoy it, you're like, okay, it is actually fun, you know? So
Yeah.
there could be that, but I'd rather make
Yep.
the masterpiece for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Arcarp. And finally, we're gonna go down to a little place we like to call the Rec Room, where we recommend something that might not be an indie game. What do you have to recommend this week?
All right, so I'm recommending something quite different here. It's actually been something I've been testing at work. It is it's called N8N, N8N. So the letter N, the number eight, the letter N .io is the site, and it's essentially like this kind of workflow automation software that like you can use like AI agents to do things. So think of just like a, I don't know, there's like nodes that you can drag around. It's like code free. And basically what I've been trying to do at work is like all these kind of like, you know, these time consuming tedious tasks, even something like taking an Excel spreadsheet and reformatting it. Like you can set up like AI automations that just do it for you weekly or whatever it is. So I've been kind of tasked with doing that at work, even though it's a little bit out of my my realm of knowledge. So I've been trying to learn a bunch about it, but it's cool. And if you can kind of set up, you know, you could even, I've seen people even have set up this sort of tool for like their groceries so that when like they're out of something, they like log it in a software and it automatically like orders it for them.
Mm.
Or, you know, automatically creates their grocery list when they go to the store because they know what they're out of already. But yeah, you can use like these AI agents to like do tasks for you. So I'm still like pretty early with like learning how it works, but so far it's pretty cool. I know it's kind of like a weird thing to recommend, but I do think that like AI agents are going to be like, you're going to hear that term more and more,
Mm-hmm.
especially, you know, in the corporate world, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably hear that more and more. It's just something I'm trying to look into now and get pretty good at so that when it gets popular, you know, I know what I'm doing with it. But yeah, just check out N8N. It's a pretty cool tool. There's like a 2-week free trial and you just mess around with it, learn some cool stuff. There's a few other like like different kind of competitors of this tool too, I think I've seen, but I don't know. I feel like we're starting to get into that era where like this busy, tedious work, like you should just have AI do it, you know, and like don't waste like 3 hours formatting a spreadsheet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like just hand it over to the bots and go have a margarita. No.
Yeah, a margarita.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not a huge fan of AI, but you know, you gotta. There are like, especially like now in my job, there's like, even today actually, we're getting trained on this thing. This is probably gonna sound boring, but basically, because I'm in insurance now, really cool stuff. When you in this one program that we have, when you renew something, for whatever reason, it's gonna automatically get these new forms in the renewal, and they're supposed to be there, but we have to document which ones are added. Okay, and we used to actually just have to do that. Now it does this on its own, but we still have to document which ones. And for whatever reason, this program does not tell us which ones they added. And they're training me on it. And the lady's like, "Oh yeah, so you're gonna have to open up both documents and just compare them and figure out." And I was like, "There's no way. This is the like that is something because we have our own version of GPT." And I
Yeah.
went into it and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be brilliant." I uploaded both documents. Like, tell me what's different, and it was so stupid. Didn't know what to do. But like, I found out a way to do it, but it was just as time consuming for me to actually do the copy and paste of what I needed it to do. But I'm like, this is crazy. This is like slowing us down by like 5 minutes every time you want to do this, and they want us to be super productive. I'm like, this is the least efficient thing I've ever heard in my life. This is crazy. So yeah, maybe I'll bring, or I'll just work on N8N at work.
Yeah,
and not
there you
tell
go.
my coworkers.
Yeah, right.
That's craziness. Now, my recommendation is a book. I read my 3rd book of the year so far. Still going strong. I'm a whole month ahead. This is Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is a sci-fi book. It really inspired a lot of the post-apocalyptic movies we have seen and stories we've seen. Literally, the opening chapter or 2 is the beginning of 28 Days Later. This guy wakes up in a hospital and the world had ended, basically.
Oh my god!
Which is like, it happens a lot, and
yeah, it happens all the time.
Oh, in stories, in these stories, happens all the time. But basically, the idea, this guy was a biologist, and these plants kind of landed, or they thought maybe landed on the planet, and they had like really useful like oils that you can harvest out of them. They were called triffids. And the interesting thing about them, though, was that they were kind of like Venus flytraps in the fact that like they will eat dead carcasses and stuff like that. But they can also like kind of walk, right? They can uproot themselves and find new places to plant themselves. And whatever, that's neither here nor there. This guy gets stung by one. He works with them and he goes blind. And they give him like special surgery that's going to restore his eyesight. But while he was in the bandages at the hospital, a huge meteor shower happens. And people are watching it. They're like, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. It blinded everybody in the world that watched it. And he wakes up. He's like, nurse has not come in. I need to see if I can see what the heck's happening. Takes off his bandages. He's like, oh, I can see. And then looks outside. And it's like, nobody's on the street. And then he just walks through the hospital and like finds like the cafeteria. And everybody's just like blind. And he's like,
what are they doing?
They're just like
walking into each other.
They're trying to find food. They're doing all this stuff. And like basically it becomes this, you find some other people who didn't see the meteor shower. And it turns out that these triffids might have been more intelligent than they thought. And this meteor shower might have been caused by them, because the only thing that humans had above the triffids in terms of like dominance was their ability to see and take care of them, right? And like, kill them if they need to. But if people were blind, they were just out poisoning these people and eating them. So,
nice.
It was a good book. It was a fun read. So, shout out Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham.
Yeah. No, it sounds awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
And, interesting also that I think, it's plant-based or whatever, because I feel like that kind of story trope is like, it's like zombies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually, or like something like that, versus like these kind of alien plants, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I can only think of like 2 other movies off the top of my head that have alien plants or like post-apocalyptic plants. It's like the Little Shop of Horrors has like an alien plant.
Yeah.
And then also The Happening, which is like not a good version of that. So, but yeah, that's going to do for the show, folks. This has been Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I've been one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh. You can find me on all platforms at Fresh Buds Pod. And I have another podcast called Fresh and Buds, talk about an indie card game called Flesh and Blood. And you can find us on all platforms at Fresh Juice Pod. Where can people find you, Matt?
Find me at Matty Gorm, Gorm, on all of the socials. And there you go.
Freshy, juicy, woosy, woosy, moosey.